What is an audio interface, and do you need one for your podcast? What up, and welcome to Clipped. I'm Eric, your podcasting coach, and I'm bringing you podcast production tips, education, and industry insights to help you launch, grow, and monetize your podcast. What up, pod people, and welcome back to the podcast. Stoked for you to be joining me today. Before we hop right in, just want to ask for your support in leaving a rating and review for the podcast. You can do this on Apple, Spotify, or whatever podcast app you listen on. It's just a great energy exchange. And if you are feeling the show, it lets new potential listeners that you like the show and that there's people supporting it. And I think people see that and they're more apt to listen, to check it out because of your good reviews. So keep them coming. If you drop a review this week, I will give you a shout out on the next episode. Today, I'm talking about audio interfaces. I'm breaking down what an audio interface is. And by the end of this episode, you'll have a better idea of if an audio interface is right for you. An audio interface enables users to connect XLR microphones to their computer. So if you use a USB microphone, it's pretty obvious. Plugs into your computer, the other one plugs into your microphone, you're off to the races. But if you're looking to level up your sound or record more than one microphone at a time, an audio interface is going to be something that you need. Basically, they take a microphone such as the one I'm using, which is the Shure SM58. This is not a USB mic. It's an XLR microphone, and an XLR cable is a 3-pin cable, and these can't plug directly into your computer. So you need an audio interface to plug the mic into, and then that audio interface connects to the computer. And essentially, it converts this microphone signal, which is analog, into a digital signal that the computer can understand and accept. If computers had XLR inputs, I imagine you could just plug right into the computer. But what the audio interface also has is a preamp. So the microphone plugs into the audio interface, and within that, there's a preamp that boosts the microphone signal. And that's where you can control the gain. You can crank the level up or you can crank the level down depending on your needs and to make sure you're getting the right signal for your recording. So basically, it is an additional piece of gear that you don't necessarily need, but I recommend if you're looking to level up your audio quality, and if you want to record several people at once, and if you want a bigger microphone selection. In my opinion, there's maybe like 4 USB microphones that are great for podcasting. There's more on the market, but I don't recommend those. The ones that I do recommend, I'm going to put in the show notes. But if you upgrade to an audio interface and start using XLR microphones, man, there's dozens to choose from that are great for podcasting that are going to give you like a higher resolution of audio, a little bit crisper, a little bit clearer. And if you're interested in, mic selection and checking out different gear and eventually upgrading your setup, I think audio interfaces are a great choice. They come in different shapes and sizes. At the most basic level, there's audio interfaces with just one microphone input, like if you do a solo cast. However, I don't recommend those. I recommend if you are going to get an audio interface to at least get 2 inputs. That way, if your show ever expands or you do one day decide to have a guest on, you have the microphone inputs to do that. It's also where you'll connect your headphones. Instead of connecting them to the computer, you'll connect them to the audio interface because that's where the microphone's plugged in. You can also connect speakers. This all happens in your audio interface. Your audio interface then connects to your computer via USB. That's why it's called an interface. It interfaces with the computer. And think of them like little boxes. I'll put a picture in the show notes and on the website so you can see what they are if you have no idea. So you got to think, is this right for you? If you're a beginner, you don't have any kind of technical background, any kind of audio background, you just want something to plug in and play, then sure, a USB microphone is perfect for that. There are USB microphones that sound really good. Do they sound great? Probably not great, but good enough. And I think when you're starting out as a podcaster, you don't want any kind of equipment or technical whereabouts to hold you back. So I'm totally not against USB microphones. I have one and I use it sometimes when I'm on the go. And now before I get into my top 5 audio interfaces for podcasters, I do want to say one thing. And this is cool, and I actually have this microphone. There is a microphone by Audio-Technica. It's the Audio-Technica ATR 2100X. So just to repeat that, it's the company's Audio-Technica, and the model of the mic is the ATR 2100X. Right now it's $79 on Amazon, and I'll link to it in the show notes. So this microphone is a USB microphone, but it also has an XLR input. Maybe you're starting out, maybe you're not ready for the audio interface. Boom, you just use the USB connection. But if you're looking to upgrade, you can buy the audio interface and you actually don't have to buy a new microphone. You can then use the XLR input on that microphone. And then this is great for upgrading your sound a little bit without having to break the bank. You only have to buy the audio interface. You don't have to buy an additional microphone. All right, so the top 5 audio interfaces for podcasters. And I'm not going to put these in any particular order. Actually, I'm going to put this as number 1. And then after that, they're in no particular order. But the first audio interface, I think the most simple, it's honestly one of the most popular for podcasters. It's the Focusrite Scarlett. And the Focusrite Scarlett series has several audio interfaces ranging from like 1 to 8 inputs, I believe, or 1 to 4 inputs. I think at 8, they changed the name. But Focusrite's the company, and the Scarlett interfaces is what you want to look at. Focusrite's done a great job at integrating itself into the podcast community. And these variety of interfaces will get you sounding really good. They're really basic and easy to set up. The Scarlett series boasts professional microphone preamps, and preamps are what drive the level of your microphone. They're super quiet preamps. There's plenty of gain to crank without inducing noise into the recording. And if you're interested in grabbing one, make sure you grab the 3rd generation Scarlett series. These are a couple years old. I'm actually using one right now, and it sounds great. It's a little bit of an upgrade from the 2nd generation. Just be aware, if you're looking on like Amazon, there are vendors that have both. So make sure it's the 3rd generation unit. That's what you want. The next is made by Zoom. It's the Zoom PodTrack P4. What's cool about this is that it's actually a handheld digital recorder, but it doubles as an audio interface. So you can record directly onto like an SD card, but you can also interface it with the computer. It's got 4 microphone inputs. You can take phone calls with it. It's got 4 headphone outputs. The microphone preamps have up to 70 decibels of gain. That's more than the Focusrite, which means if you're using a microphone that requires a lot of gain, if you can't really get the signal that you want, your preamp in your audio interface probably doesn't have enough gain. But in this, there's 70 decibels of gain, so you can crank that thing loud and it's not going to induce any noise into your recording. The next is the PreSonus Revelator IO24. Great pre's, clean signal. It looks great too. This looks like a audio interface of the future. It's great for streaming too. So if streaming is part of your podcasting strategy, I would look at this interface. I wouldn't look at the Zoom or the Focusrite. The 4th is the Rodecaster Pro. The version 2 is out now, the Rodecaster Pro 2. This just came out a couple months ago as of recording this, but this is like a full podcast studio in a box, is how I've seen it referred to by some people. I have one. Don't use it a lot, honestly. I probably need to sell it. Probably overkill for a lot of you unless you're doing a multi-person show or you're trying to do more of like a live show. So it's got the sound pads that you can drop in music cues or sound effects by pushing the sound pad button. It also has effects for your voice. It interfaces with the computer, so it's an audio interface, but it's also its own digital recorder, kind of like the Zoom PodTrack P4. So this is great for recording in person, recording up to 4 mics, and you can actually record things from the phone. So if it's a phone call or you can plug a smartphone directly into it. You can also connect to the Rodecaster Pro via Bluetooth, which is great. It's got a killer touchscreen, so everything's super intuitive. It actually has faders on it too, so it's almost like a mixer. It's got 4 headphone ports, 1 for each microphone. The microphone preamps have 75 decibels of clean gain, so you're going to get crisp, clean audio without any noise. If you do record remotely, let's say you've got 3 people in studio with you or in a bedroom with you or in a living room or wherever you record, and your 4th person, your friend or the person you're interviewing is remote, you can do those 3 mics in person, and then you can connect remotely to someone because it interfaces with the computer via a platform like Riverside. So you got that in-person recording and that remote capability that can be used at the same time, or you can do them like individually. Last but not least is the Apogee Duet. The Apogee Duet 3 is actually the new one. Hands down, the best sounding audio interface on here is the Apogee Duet. Apogee's a woman-run company out of Santa Monica, and they've been making gear for high-end professional studios around the world for decades. And fortunately, that technology was put into this small 2-input audio interface. The conversion is great. So just a quick audio lesson. The microphone is analog and it has to get converted to a digital signal into the computer. And depending on how much you pay, and different audio interfaces have different levels of conversion. You pay more for higher conversion and higher sound quality. And Apogee has done that with the Duet 3. You're going to get really clean audio. This thing, as far as quality, I think is the best. It is expensive, $699 right now. But if you're really looking for that level of audio for your podcast, the Apogee Duet 3 won't disappoint. And it's not that, the Focusrite, the Rodecaster, the Zoom don't sound as good, but there's not as much time and effort spent on the conversion. See, all these interfaces, they have to cut costs somewhere. And so like the Rodecaster Pro has all those features for like phone calls, and there's EQ and compression built in and this and that. If they were to also like up the conversion, they would have to raise the price a lot. Whereas the Apogee Duet 3, it doesn't have any of those bells and whistles, but the conversion is really good. I would say on this list, the Apogee Duet 3 and the Focusrite Scarlett probably have the best conversion. Focusrite, they're in the podcast game now. That's probably how you've heard of them, but they've been in professional recording studios for musicians across the world for decades. Hundreds of like #1 hits have been recorded on Focusrite equipment, not the Scarlett, but they have other pieces of gear built to the highest of standards. But what's cool about the Scarlett is they did their best to put that technology into the Scarlett without having to jack up the price. Hopefully this episode helped you think a little bit about an audio interface, and if you need to upgrade or maybe you're thinking about upgrading, hopefully now you have some more information on what they are and their best use cases, because you might not need one, or maybe you do. But anyway, guys, thank you for listening. To check out the podcast on the website, head on over to thepodcasthaven.com/podcast. Honestly, those of you that don't know, I host this podcast Clipped, but I also run a podcast production agency called The Podcast Haven. And so these episodes are going up on the Podcast Haven's website as part of that ecosystem. So that's thepodcasthaven.com/podcast or thepodcasthaven.com. Click on the podcast tab. Thanks, guys, and I will see you next week.